Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. Today I have a very special video because a lovely team from CHALKOLA, I hope I'm saying it right, CHALKOLA? Correct me if I'm wrong. So a lovely team from CHALKOLA contacted me and offered me to review their 32 color acrylic paint kit. And I said yes, of course. And on top of that, they also offering to my viewers a discount code, which I will post in the description and at the end of the video. So let's check it out. A disclaimer before we begin, they are not sponsoring this video. They just kindly offered me this paint kit and just asked me for my honest opinion on what I think about their paints. So let's see. So I received it a while ago, 2 weeks ago, and I was waiting to open this on video, so I haven't even removed the plastic yet because I just wanted to do like the proper first impression. And right away, the first thing that I want to point out is if you look on the back, you have the full list of paints. You have the full list of paints, and you have all of the pigments listed and light fastness. And I have to say that this is looking pretty good. Like, there is a lot of pigments that are a lot of paints that are single pigment paints. Like violet, phthalo blue is PB15, ultramarine blue PB29, and these are original pigments. Lemon yellow is pigment yellow 3, yellow ochre, pigment yellow 42, and you can check it out for yourself. Some of these are mixes, like raw sienna is actually a mix of a few paints, but this is something that you would use in a mix anyway. And paints usually like blues or yellows are something that you incorporate in your more complicated paint mixes. So you always want to make sure that those are the original pigments. And if those consist, like something ultramarine blue consists of 3 pigments, then it can kind of lead an unpredictable result because you don't know what pigments exactly went into that paint. So when you have only 1 pigment, you know that you're gonna get the exact result that you're looking for. Right, so let's open it. The packaging is really cute. I just love these colors. Ooh, all right. These are very big tubes. Like, this is a nice size of tube. Is this focusing? Oops, let me bring closer. Alright, so let's see. We have 2 titanium whites, of course, because you're gonna use it the most. We have our yellows, yellow ochre, vermilion, red. Right away, also the fact that I like is that this set has warmer reds and cooler reds. So it has vermilion red, which is warmer red. It has scarlet red, which is kind of medium, but it has rose, which is a cooler red. Rose madder is also cooler red, so these cooler reds will be nicer for mixing purples, and warmer reds are always better for mixing oranges. But you have orange here anyway. Oh wow, this is like Christmas, isn't it? Just look at this beauty. Let me flip this the right way. So what is here? Oh, we have all of our browns. I really like when they include their earthy colors because my paintings are usually kind of on the muted side. They're not very vibrant. So I do incorporate a lot of the earth colors into my mixes, and especially if you're mixing greens, if you want to just take it down a notch to saturation, some of the earth colors are just the best ones. And also for the blues, you want to take the blue one just a little bit down to saturation. You can mix them with the earth colors. So let me take them out and I'm gonna start color swatching. Okay, so before we begin color swatching, I just want to show a few other things that I will be using for today's review and today's demo that I'm going to do later. So obviously the paints. For the color swatch, I'm actually just using a large sheet of watercolor paper, and this is not the ideal paper to paint on with acrylic paint because it's just not thick enough to take the acrylic. But if you have gesso, acrylic gesso at home, you can just apply, I would say 2 layers of gesso, and then you can easily apply acrylic paint. And I've actually done that with oil paints. So we got paper for the color swatch. I'm also going to be using a mixing palette, and this is actually palette paper pad, and I just love it because of the convenience that you can just rip off the sheet after you're done mixing. And this is basically just sort of like a glossy waterproof paper that holds the paints well and lets you mix really well, and it's cheap. It actually, I don't remember how much paper, maybe $5 for this whole pad. It has 40 sheets, so I'm going to be using this for color mixing. Another thing you can use for painting with acrylics is canvas paper. Canvas paper also good for oils and acrylics, but whoops, no. One concern with the canvas paper is that it's actually not as thick. It's even thinner than watercolor paper, so just for the durability, it's not really gonna last you that long. If you want to mount it and glue it on a hardboard after you're done painting, you of course can do that to sort of preserve your painting for later. So this is one of the options too. And my demo later I'm going to be doing on the Canva artboards. And these are actually the thicker, the much more durable boards that have sort of a little bit of the canvas texture. Can you see? This is not focusing. I'll try to take a closer picture for you. So this just has a little bit of texture, and these come in different sizes. This one is 8 by 10. You can get 9 by 11, 11 by 14, and even bigger, I think. So I'm going to be using this one for the demo later. The brushes, you know, I like to use just the regular craft brushes for all of my tutorials with gouache and with acrylic too, because acrylic paint is usually very harsh on your brushes. And because of that, I also always recommend using some kind of a clean brush cleaner or brush soap for your brushes. Even though acrylic paint is for water soluble, and you would think that you wash it off with the water, but there's still a lot of the medium and the pigment left in brushes, and over time your brush starts sort of just fanning out because there's a lot of buildup in there. So a good brush cleaner is always helpful. And some paper towels. And a small jar of water. I don't really use that much water, so I don't know. Hopefully this will last me without having to clean it. Oh, another thing that you can use is actually just any regular watercolor mixing palette for mixing paint. And this one is a plastic one, and acrylic paint, it actually just peels off. So if something dries up, you can just peel it off and have it fresh for the next painting. Alright, so let's begin with the color swatching. I'm gonna go in order that the paints are arranged in the set. So there's no particular order to the color swatch that I'm gonna be doing. Usually I like to arrange it sort of in a color wheel direction, but just for the sake of saving time, I'm just gonna go with each one of them as they are in the set. So the first one is a titanium white, and you actually get 2 of these just because you're gonna be going through these the most. And I'm just gonna make a small dip on the paper. I brought the camera a little closer just so you can see the consistency of the paint better. So usually what I'm looking for the consistency in paint is the workability, how ready it is to paint right out of the tube. So this is just a little bit of paint straight out of the tube, and this is just a regular flat brush, which is dry. I didn't put any water in there just to see better the consistency of the paint. And you can see right away that I can spread it easily. And it actually has very nice buttery consistency. So let me get the next one. And the next color is lemon yellow. And this one's actually going to be easier to see for you. So I cleaned the brush so it's a little bit wet, but I'm still not adding a lot of water to it. And you can just see how easily it spreads. And this is very good for painting, because sometimes if the paint is very thick and stiff, you have to incorporate some medium into it. So continuing with the color swatching, I'm actually gonna speed up through the rest of it, so I'm not just boring you with an hour of the color swatches, but I want to show you the tubes and how they look. These are soft tubes, which is nice because if you know the aluminum tubes, sometimes when you start squeezing them and sort of rolling them up, which is something that I do, they can crack and a lot of paint comes out and you just waste a lot of paint because of that. So this is how the tubes look, and I like that they include the pigment number and just the identification of the pigment on here. You also get a little circle identifying whether the paint is opaque or semi-opaque. So this yellow ochre is opaque, but for example, if I take scarlet red, it is semi-opaque because you see just half the circle is colored in. And if I take, for example, Indian yellow, it's transparent. And the reason you want to know that, because for example, in your color mixing, opaque paints will be much stronger in the mix. And your more transparent paints will have less of a tinting strength, so you're going to use more of these. Or if you want to have just a slight effect in your mix, then you want to use something more transparent. And transparent paints are also good for glazing, and you can do acrylic glazes too. You can either dilute your paint with water, or you can dilute your paint with pigment. Not with pigment, with medium. Sorry, yeah, so you can dilute your paint with medium, and you can do glazes just like in watercolors or in oils. So let's continue with the color swatching. So here is the completed color swatch test for all the colors. You can see they're really nice and vibrant, and you can get a good coverage from opaque colors, and transparent colors just have this very nice rich undertone. And I really like the variety of colors that you get. You could get different greens, different blues, cool and warm reds, and you can see right here the nice opaque coverage. I think it was burnt umber. And also, as you saw here, this one is a copper, and you have three metallics. You have copper, silver, and you have gold. And as you notice, these metallic colors are more transparent than other colors, so just to keep that in mind. And I left a little bit of the titanium white dip here just to see how long it stays in a workable kind of consistency, and it's still nice and soft. Let me try it actually. Yes, as you can see, it's still nice and soft, so it doesn't dry up as fast as I would say gouache. So it stays workable for quite a long time. So some of the colors are drying up, and you can see that they're drying to a matte finish. And I like this look, but if you like more of a glossy finish, you can of course apply just a spray varnish on top of your painting after you're done with it. But I really don't mind it. I like this flat look that these paints have, sort of like gouache in a lot of ways. So let's try and paint something. So I had a little change of plans. I've decided to continue my sketchbook landscape series. You know the sketchbook well because this has all of the tutorials that you've seen me doing here on this channel and just some extra sketching stuff. So I decided to just keep sketching landscapes in this Moleskine watercolor sketchbook. You can still use let me get this. You can still use the artboards that I recommended before, and I was gonna try it, but just for the sake of sort of continuing my series, I'm gonna do this in a sketchbook. So let me get the tape. I just like to tape sort of the edges of my painting, and it helps me to plan the proportions better, but also gives me just a really nice and clean look when I peel it off. It's probably the most satisfying part of painting. And you just peel off the tape and reveal the nice edge. But this is not a necessary step. You can skip this if you don't want to. So I'm going to be using my Moleskine watercolor sketchbook. I'm using my palette paper pad. And the picture I'm going to be using today for reference, I'm going to leave it in the corner. I got it from Unsplash. I found it on Unsplash. And this is just a really nice website to find pictures you can use for reference. You don't have to buy them, and they're royalty free. Just give a shout out to the author and leave a link to the original file when you're using it. So in terms of colors, so this is like a sunny day, so I'm thinking a little more on the vibrant side. Let me sketch first. So first I'm gonna sketch the horizon line, and you can always crop the original reference image as much as you want. It doesn't have to be the same. So I've got my horizon line there. We have water lines kind of going out into the distance. And we got our sort of lower side of the mountains here. You got more mountains in the distance. And this is just a rough sketch. And here are some taller mountains here. And I'm never really going after the very precise and accurate look. You can change it up a little bit, you can make it your own. So just gonna bring the tree line sort of reference here. Some trees are going all the way down to the water. This is sort of going to be our brightest spot, as you can see on the picture too. This has the brightest color. Alright, let's start painting. The brushes I'm going to be using today is the brushes that you see me already doing the color swatches with. And this is just from the regular set of craft brushes. This one is 1/2 inch. I believe I'm gonna take probably some smaller brushes. Let me see if I have any other flat ones. Oh, this is another flat brush. And I'm gonna take out some smaller ones, but I usually end up doing the whole painting with just one brush, so might not even need as many. For the colors, let me see. I'm gonna start with white, with titanium white. Now I'm gonna get more of this. I'm taking lemon yellow. I'm taking yellow ochre. The only thing I wish this set had is cadmium yellow, or any alternative of the cadmium yellow. Just sort of with the richness of the yellow color. So I got that. I'm gonna get a little bit of the Indian yellow, and this one is actually a transparent color, so I'm probably not gonna use this as much on its own, but we can use this in the mixes. I'm gonna take a little bit of the scarlet red and vermilion red. And vermilion is warmer than scarlet, so I'm not gonna be using this on its own, but this is a nice way to mix your oranges and incorporate in some other mixes like greens. Just takes them down a notch. I'm forgetting something here. What else I want to use? Oh, I'm gonna move on to the earth colors. Raw sienna. I really like this one. I'm not sure how much I'm gonna be using these colors. I don't know how well their coverage is yet, so I'm taking most of them sort of just to see how well they mix and how well they cover. So this is raw umber. I'm gonna take burnt umber too. Burnt umber. What else? Okay, let's move on to the greens. Okay, I'm gonna take sap green. And if you're just following this tutorial to do a landscape study, you don't need as many colors as I'm going to be using here. I'm just taking them out for the sake of testing this set of paints. Okay, we got greens, the blues. We have the phthalo blue, the ultramarine blue, and the cobalt blue. And I think I'm gonna use all of them. Why not, right? So we've got the phthalo blue, which is a cooler blue. We've got ultramarine blue. And we have cobalt blue, and if you look at the pigment content on the cobalt blue, it has pigment white 6, which is titanium white, and has pigment blue 15, which is phthalo blue. So this is just basically a mix of the colors that we already have, but for the convenience, I'm just gonna still use it so we don't have to do as many mixes. And I'm gonna use the Prussian blue. We'll see how this color mixes. Oh, also, let's try Payne's Gray. So I basically have half of the set on my palette. But again, you can use just a few colors. I'm doing this for the sake of trying as many colors as I can in one tutorial. So let's start with the sky. I like to start with the sky because it usually just sort of sets the mood for the painting. And I'm gonna start with white and my cobalt blue. Okay, right away you can see that I took just a little bit of cobalt blue, but it's very strong and it's given me a really nice mix. So, and this is a good thing when you're trying to sort of see how much of these colors you are going to be. I'm going to take a little bit of the phthalo blue just to brighten the sky a little bit more. So when you're just trying a new color, try to see how much of this color are you using in the mix. So if you sort of wasting a lot of paint and it's disappearing in a mix, you know that happens a lot, it just means that the pigment content is actually not as strong. But here I have to say it's very good. I'm gonna lighten up the horizon line and hopefully have too much paint. Oh, another reason why you're mixing, sort of your paint is disappearing in the mix, it could be because you have too much paint build up in your brush. So I'm gonna take a paper towel and clean it up. I'm gonna take some more white. And I'm sort of rough around the edges, around mountains, just because I'm going to be painting mountains anyway, so I don't have to have a very nice clean edge. I'm just trying to go a little lighter because that was not supposed to be that dark. On a photograph, if you're painting from a photograph, the camera usually adds more contrast than there actually is in the real life, and you know that the objects in the distance actually appear lighter and softer. They don't have harsh edges, but also a little bit desaturated. So I'm just trying to make sure that I'm not following the photograph, because we still want to have this sort of a painterly effect. So I'm going to let this dry a little bit before I introduce the clouds. I'm just gonna darken the sky on the top a little bit more, just so that we have this sort of a nice gradient going from the lighter to darker. And the watercolor paper in this Moleskine sketchbook has a little bit of the texture like the cold press paper, and I'm letting that texture show through. It just saves me some time from putting in the details in the sky. Okay, so actually, while it's not too dry, I'm gonna try putting in some clouds in there, so then we can maybe blend the edge a little bit. So titanium white is quite transparent, I have to say, in this mix. So we probably have to go over. Usually titanium white is very opaque, but not in this case. So we're probably gonna have to go over it a little bit later. But I'm just gonna leave sort of rough indication of some clouds there. Okay. I'm probably gonna move on to the smaller brush for the mountains. Let me see. I'll take this flat brush for the mountains. I'm gonna start with the ones in the distance, and I'm gonna mix some ultramarine blue with titanium white and a little bit of phthalo blue and a little bit of Prussian blue. No, this is actually too blue. I'm gonna take the Payne's gray instead. I'm gonna put back some of the blue. These are very saturated colors. I'm actually gonna take a little bit of the burnt umber and raw umber to just take it down a notch. So this is very saturated. You have to remember that your objects in the distance are not going to be as saturated. So the brown is actually a nice way to gradually desaturate your blue because it's not as harsh on the mix, so it's easier to control in a way. And I'm just putting some mountains sort of in the shadow. You can see there is a cloud shadow there. So I'm putting sort of the shadow color first, and then I'm gonna go over with the lighter color. And most of the time I'm just wiping my brush with a paper towel. I'm not putting too much water, because using a lot of water can be tricky when you start diluting your paint too much and you sort of lose your coverage. It just doesn't cover papers nicely. So for my lighter part, I'm gonna mix a little bit sort of a purpler color, and I'm using some of my yellow ochre, what was it, scarlet red, and a little bit of blue, ultramarine blue, and this just gives me a very subtle sort of purple color, a little bit more red. Again, remember to wipe your brush when you're mixing colors, and I will lighten it up a little bit. Okay, now this is looking good. And when you're painting objects that are far in a distance, don't worry about the details too much. A lot of times, just adding some texture with your brush is already enough to have some interesting sort of a pattern going on there. I'm actually gonna lighten up this part a little bit here. So keep in mind that the colors actually stay wet for quite a while. So this is not like a gouache, doesn't dry as fast. So if you're going over certain colors, they might still be quite wet and might lift up a little bit from the color on the, which is what happened here. So I'm just gonna probably leave that part. I decided that I had a little too much shadow in there, so I'm just gonna lighten it up a little bit more. Okay, so we have our mountain in a distance, and I'm gonna slowly actually I'm gonna do this mountain that is sort of in the middle ground, so it's still gonna be quite blue and it has some greenery on it, so it's gonna be sort of the cooler blue color, because in the distance you cannot see the separate trees, but you can see that it has sort of a blue tone to it. So I mix a little bit of sap green and Payne's gray, a little bit of the blue in there, and as we go up, I'm actually going to be adding more white to it, just to lighten it up a little bit. Let me pick up even a little bit of this gray color. Actually, probably a little too much green, so I'm gonna put back some of the blue and a little bit of the burnt umber and a tiny bit of white. So far I can say that these colors are mixing really well. They giving you sort of predictable results, what you would expect from the colors that you're picking up. And this just tells you that they are really using the genuine pigments in their mixes. So I'm gonna leave some room for the highlights and lighter colors as we go down. And I'm actually gonna start mixing a little bit of that lighter green color. And I'm using some sap green, some of the yellow ochre, and Indian yellow, and probably a little bit more of the raw sienna in there. Because usually when you get closer to the water, you sort of start seeing more greenery. Sort of more lighter colors. And I want to just sort of mark down the overall pattern of the trees that we have here, so that I can keep the direction in mind. And oh, I haven't finished the lighter part of the mountain, which is I'm gonna mix again sort of this little bit of the purplish color. I have to wipe it well. Just putting back sort of some of the blue back in it, so it's looking a little more natural. So it's not too purple. And even within the highlighted area, you have to remember that you are going to see some texture and some shadows. So I'm going to put in just a few dots here and there. Just so it doesn't look plain. And we'll put the shadow side on this mountain. And when you're working in a sketchbook, it's okay if you leave some white spots showing through the whites of the paper. It just sort of adds to the sense of texture. I'm just adding a little bit of the blue to sort of add the mid-tone value to this mountain. So it's okay to have a little bit of the white showing, in my opinion. I mean, feel free to disagree, but I don't really cover up the entire area of the paper of what I would do, for example, in oil painting. I always try to get the full coverage of the canvas. But here we can have a little bit showing through. Okay, so just a little bit of the mid-tone value added there. And I'm gonna cover up some of the greenery on this closer mountain here. So we already started working with the green colors. And this area is still in shadow, so it's still gonna be pretty dark. And again, don't try to paint all of the trees separately. I'm just gonna warm it up a little bit. Looks very cool. This is already moving sort of closer to us, so you want to make sure that it looks... Oh, that's... what is it, burnt umber? That's very strong. That's alright, we're gonna use it somewhere. So when you're moving closer and you're sort of painting the same object, make sure that you are changing the temperature too. So if now our trees are getting closer and the mountain is closer to us, it's gonna be a little bit warmer. So I'm just gonna put in a little bit of the yellow ochre and Indian yellow in my mix here. But again, they are still in shadow, so I'm not trying to compete with the lighter greens that are going to be in the light, but now we just sort of warming it up just a notch. And again, this is a mountain, so all the trees are far in the distance. I'm not painting any large details, just sort of the texture of the brush. Just using the texture of the brush to complete the picture. And this side also has a little bit of the ground showing through. So I'm using some of my mix of the lighter, this pinkish color that I used, and a little bit of my blue and burnt umber in there because this is still in shadow. Just gonna put a little bit of red to sort of warm it up and add some interest to it. I mean, a little bit of white to lighten it. But overall trying to keep it fairly neutral. And I'm gonna have some darker, lighter values in there. As you can see, I go a lot between the colors, or back and forth, darken them, lightening them. It just helps me to create a nice variety of colors. And especially if you're painting something that is far in a distance, like here, you don't want to go into too many details, but you're still trying to add some interest to it. And we have some ground shown here too. Just a little bit. Just putting a little bit of blue to this mix. Okay, now I'm gonna start adding up a little bit more of the greenery to our mountainside. So all of the sort of tree lines that you're starting to see with more detail. And again, just a little bit of texture of the brush is already doing its job. And what you can do is put the brush sort of the base of the tree and then drag it up a little bit and lift it up, and sort of creates a rough edge. And that sort of mimics the pattern of the trees. You can also do that sideways to have some taller trees. And don't go in straight lines, because the trees never really grow in straight lines. They kind of have random patterns. So I'm going to give you a closer look to sort of how I'm doing my trees. And you see that I put the brush and then just lift it up, drag it up, and kind of let it go. And you'll see that the texture on the brush and all of the loose bristles are just helping to create that nice texture of the trees. And now I'm going to start adding a little bit of that highlight that you can see, actually a little bit more of this tree line I'm going to bring up here. And now I'm going to start adding the highlights that you see on the trees, just on the tips. So I'm mixing some of the sap green, yellow ochre, and Indian yellow. Indian yellow is very transparent, so it doesn't really do as much, but I'm gonna also bring some of the raw sienna that's more opaque color, so that we have better coverage, because we're gonna be going over another color. So let's see how this looks. I'm not really showing much. Let me bring more. Let me actually mix some of my color. That's actually probably going to be better for the orange. So I'm using a little bit of the scarlet red and vermilion red, and I'm adding some lemon yellow. So yeah, this is the time when I really miss having some of my cadmium yellow sort of opacity. Cadmium yellow would look really nice in here. Just because of how opaque it is and how well it covers. Alright, so I'm gonna pick up a little bit of the paint right on the tip of the brush so that I have something to leave there on the paper. And usually if you're dealing with a lot of transparent colors, they are not shown well just because they are transparent. So to make sure that you are adding some color to it, I kind of pick up right on the edge of the brush. And also remember that in the highlight area you are gonna see more color just because the sun brings out all of the nice colors in the trees. So don't be afraid to mix some red and green and orange in there. I'm trying not to overdo it and just to do a little bit because our main focal point is going to be the mountain on the right. So I don't want this part to take attention away from that one. Okay, so now we can, since we're already using this color, we can just start putting in some of the yellow. And at this point, my yellow is just a total mix of everything that I had on the palette. I have lemon yellow, yellow ochre, maple, no, not maple, Indian yellow. And I'm just gonna mix all of these colors together. But not too much, not so that I end up with the flat color, but just so I have enough sort of interest in there, because we don't know exactly what trees grow in that area, but we do know that there are definitely going to be different ones, and they all kind of change their color differently. This, that I would say, is beginning of fall probably, just because not all of the colors, not all of the trees are turning yellow. And I'm mixing a little bit of sort of olive green by using my sap green, my yellow ochre, and raw sienna. And just here, sort of at the bottom, and bring it up a little bit in some areas. And again, nothing very specific, just a little bit of color here and there. Just taking a little bit of the Payne's gray, because we have some darker trees. And I'm just using the very edge of my brush to create texture. We have some taller evergreens there. And I'm just mixing whatever greens I have now. You can of course mix the greens from blues and yellows, but since we already have such a nice variety of greens, we can just use them straight out of the tube. So I'm running out of lemon yellow because this is the color so far that I use the most. And it's also not, yellow is usually the weakest color in any medium. So even in oils, if you're mixing yellow with some other colors, you usually end up putting more yellow into the mix than the other color. So I'm mixing up some sort of gold and oranges with vermilion red and yellow ochre and Indian yellow. Again, I'm not following the pattern precisely from the photograph. I'm just sort of creating nice kind of arrangement of colors. I have a few lighter ones here too. Alright, so now I'm gonna do the water, and the water here on the picture appears sort of a greenish color, but I like to do sort of this nice reflection that we would get from this mountain. So I'm gonna put in some of my yellow, red, and orange mixes that I have here. And some of the green that we have, and I will mix some phthalo blue, some cobalt blue, a little bit of the Payne's gray, and white, because our water is mainly reflecting the color of the sky, even though a lot of this sort of gonna be in the shadow. That's why, let me pick up a little bit more of the Payne's gray. So that's why it's sort of appearing darker than the color of the sky. So I'm just gonna put in a little bit of the darker color in there too, and a little bit of green. So I'm just gonna put some ripples on the water, and I can always go back and change it a little bit. Let me put some. I'm gonna put some more of the green color. In there as we start seeing the depth of the water, and a little bit more of the Payne's gray and just a little bit more of the burnt umber as I'm doing this shadow here. And I'm gonna mix, I'm gonna need some more of the yellow ochre. I'm gonna mix the sand color from yellow ochre and a little bit of the cobalt blue and some of my earth colors. This is too dark. Let me clean the brush. Gonna need some more white. So my sand color is mainly yellow ochre, raw sienna, and some burnt umber, raw umber, and white, and a little bit of the cobalt blue. And I'm gonna go over just a little bit of this shallow water and add sort of my sand color to this shallow water side, just because you would actually be able to see some of the water, some of the sand showing through the water. I'll just darken it a little bit. And now I'm gonna just create a little bit more sort of texture on the sand. So I'm putting some of the scarlet red and a little bit of this green blue mix, and a little bit of the burnt umber too, and just to add some texture, maybe sort of indications of rocks. And I'm gonna mix a darker color with Payne's gray and raw umber. And now actually that we're sort of coming closer to the foreground, you can start introducing more contrast. Because you would naturally be seeing more contrast at this point, closer to you. Now I'm gonna mix some grass color, like light green, with yellow ochre and my sap green, and I'm just gonna put some grass in there. A bit more of yellow ochre in some areas. Let's go put a little bit more of the sand back in here. Just sort of showing that it's not all Whereas there's still some sand showing through. A little bit this color here to just sort of to bring them two together. And even though colors are changing as you're moving closer and farther away, I do like to incorporate a few notes sort of here and there that help me sort of bring the painting together and for it to look more cohesive. So I really don't mind sort of using colors. There's different color notes on the painting in different areas. I'm gonna put some taller grass in here, maybe some. We're gonna mix a little bit more with the darker green, and just to create some interest in there. I'm actually gonna lighten the water a little bit. I'm gonna use some of the cobalt blue and white. Just to add sort of light accents. Maybe we'll put just a few more light spots on the trees here. Now, I'm thinking to put a tree here. Just sort of for the sake of framing out this composition. I'm just gonna put a simple pine tree. I'm mixing some raw umber and Payne's gray for the shadow. Actually, at this point, it's going to be much taller. And maybe just another one on the side here. And now I'll just put a few lighter spots on the highlight side. Alright, so here is our little mountain landscape, and I'm gonna take a closer picture of it. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you liked my review of this new set from CHALKOLA. I'm planning to do more in the future, possibly more still lifes if you're interested. Actually, let me know in the comments below, what would you like to see next? Oh, my fingers are so dirty. Oh no. So let me know in the comments below what you would like to see next. And I'm gonna put the code on the screen here. And this is the discount code that you can use to get a discount on these paints. And I'm gonna leave a link in the description below. You can go check it out. And let me know what you think. If you try their paints or if you try my tutorial, tag me on Instagram. I'm gonna leave all of my links down below in the description, and I would like to see your art, and I would like to see what do you come up and what do you create. I always give a shout out to everybody who tags me, and I repost it in my stories and share my tutorials and share your results. If you don't want to, just let me know, and I'm not gonna share it, but let me know. So go to Instagram, tag me, tag CHALKOLA if you're trying their paints, and I highly recommend to try them because I was really pleasantly impressed with the quality. Very nice and very affordable for this big set. So I hope you like them too. Bye!